Namaste and a very good evening to all of you. I welcome you to my channel, The Outlier. My name is Mithun. In today's video, I'll be talking about a very interesting option, a very interesting feature in Microsoft Excel, which is called as the what if analysis. Even before I proceed to demonstrate how to exactly work with what if analysis, may I request you to subscribe to my channel, also like and share my videos. Let's begin by asking a simple question. What exactly do we mean by what if analysis? What if analysis is the process of changing the values in the cells to see how those changes will affect the outcome of the formula on the worksheet. There are three kinds of what if analysis tools in Excel. The first is scenarios. Second, you have goal seeking. And thirdly, we have data tables. There are many applications to the what if analysis. Typically, let's say you're interested in sales forecasting or profit estimation. Or thirdly, you may also be interested in understanding budget forecasting for different scenarios. For each of these analyses, you can use the what if analysis. What if analysis can be used to replace many complicated analysis and formulae in the existing worksheet. As far as the goal of this particular video is concerned, the goal is to learn how to use what if analysis in Microsoft Excel with the help of a simple table. Let me now introduce you to the table that I'll be working on. There are 4 columns in this particular table. The first is serial number, second is role, and the third column is items, and the last field that I have is the number that is associated with items. Let's imagine that we are talking about a product whose price is 25 rupees. The number of quantities that we are manufacturing is 100. When the price is 25 and the quantity is 100, how do we calculate the total revenue? The total revenue, if you look at the formula bar, is simply the product of price and quantity, which is to say you multiply 25 by 100, you will be getting 2,500, which will be the total revenue. Let's keep the revenue aside. Now let's talk about the cost. We have the transportation cost, and for this video, I'm assuming 10% of the total revenue to be the transportation cost. 10% of total revenue would be around 250. Then we have the item cost, which is 2,000. How do we obtain 2,000? If we are going to multiply 20 with cell number E4, let's say the quantities that we are making is 100 and each quantity costs 20 rupees. So 20 into 100 would give you the item cost of 2,000. Once we have the transportation cost and the item cost, you can go on to add up the transportation cost and the item cost to get the total cost as 2,250. So you have 2 important pieces of information. One is the total revenue and the second one is the total cost. How do we calculate the profit? The outcome variable or the target variable profit can be calculated as a simple subtraction between total revenue and total cost. So cell number E5 minus the cell number E8, that is total revenue minus total cost, would generate the profit value. Now, this is the current scenario. Let's say your manager walks up to you and he says, I am thinking of increasing the quantities produced. I want a rough estimate of the expected profit. And he may have 3 different scenarios. Let us say the first scenario that he is thinking of is to increase the quantity from the current value of 100 to 200. So if you were to double the quantity, the expected profit would be 500. This is the first scenario. Now, if you were to further increase the quantities from 200 to 300, you can see here the profit jumps up to 750. Let me go back to 300. Let's say the third scenario that you have would be to increase the quantity from 300 to 400, in which case the profit that you will be making is 1000. What we have done just now is to change the value of the quantity and see what is the impact of change in quantity on the target variable, namely profit. If you want to prepare a consolidated table of the different scenarios, we have an option which is called as what if analysis. But before proceeding to what if analysis, let me replace this value of 400 with 100, which is the current situation. This is the original numbers that we have. In the data menu, you have the forecast section. The first option here is called as the what if analysis. Let me click on the drop-down menu. Excel highlights three important options. Under the what if section, you can perform the scenario manager. What exactly is the scenario manager? Scenario manager allows you to run different scenarios and see what is its impact on the outcome variable. You also have other options like goal seeking and data table. As far as this video is concerned, I would like to focus on the scenario manager. Let me go ahead and click on the scenario manager. Let me delete some of the existing options. These options are from the earlier experiments that I had done. If you click on the scenario manager for the first time, you should be able to see a dialog box like this, which says scenario manager. It displays a message which says no scenarios defined. Click add to add. Now, in case you want to create a fresh scenario, you can choose this particular button, which is called as the add button. The scenario name here is 200 quantities. So this is the first scenario that I am interested in creating. You can give any other name, but for clarity, it is better that you give 200 quantities. By changing cells, let me change the cell number E4. If you want, you can give a comment. Just in case you open up this particular dialog box again, you can look at the comment and understand what exactly you have done. You can specify a very short comment saying when quantity is 200, what is the expected profit? So this is what we are studying. Once you have given the scenario name and change and specify the changing cells option, you can go ahead and hit the OK button. Here, you can see a new dialog box which says scenario values. Enter the value for each of the changing cells. It is reading the current value of 100. I'd like to change this value of 100 to 200. Now, once you specify the new value, you have two options. Either you can go ahead and hit the add button, or you can go ahead and hit the OK button. I have just now clicked on the OK button. With this, my first scenario is created of 200 quantities. I want to create two additional scenarios. So let me go ahead and hit the add button once again. This opens up the add scenario. Scenario name here would be 300 quantities. Changing cells. Yes, I wanted to change cell number E4. Once you have done this, here I'll ignore the comment and hit the OK button. Enter the values for each of the changing cells. Here I'll be specifying the value as 300, and once you specify the new scenario, that is, I want to see what happens to profit when the number of quantities that I make is increased to 300. I can go ahead and hit the OK button. We have created a scenario for 200 quantities, another scenario for 300 quantities. Next, I can create the third scenario by clicking on the Add button. The third scenario would be 400 quantities. Changing cells, I'll choose cell number E4. I'll ignore the comment section and hit the OK button. Enter values for each of the changing cells. We have given 200. We have specified 300 in the second scenario. Here, we can specify the value as 400. Once you do this, you can hit the OK button. So what you've done here is to create 3 different scenarios of quantities. You have created the first scenario where the quantity is 200. Then you've created the second scenario where the quantity is 300. And next you've created the third scenario where the quantity is 400. You can see here, Excel displays each of these scenarios 200, 300, and 400. Once you have created these scenarios, in case you want to add more and more scenarios, typically in a business scenario, you may have 10, 15 different scenarios. You can go on using the Add button to create more and more scenarios. Here you have 2 options. One is what is called a summary. If you were to click on the summary option, Excel would give you the consolidated report of quantity versus profit. But even before I proceed to that particular option, I can choose to run the first scenario, namely 200 quantities. Please observe the quantity section and the profit. The current quantity is 100, for which the estimated profit is 250. If I were to make 200 quantities of the product, let me now hit the show button. You can see the profit jumps to 500. Let me select the second scenario, 300 quantities, and click on the show button. Here, the profit jumps to 750. Lastly, I'll be selecting 400 quantities and hit the show button. If you were to make 400 quantities, your profit would be 1,000 rupees. So this is how, for different scenarios, you can work out what is the estimated profit. In case I want a consolidated report so that I can take this to my boss and discuss the different possibilities, what I'd like to do is, instead of making it dynamic the way it is right now, I like to hit the summary button. Here, by default, you have 2 options. The report type can be printed as a scenario summary, which will be a simple table, or you can also ask Excel to give you a scenario pivot table report. The result cells, here I'll change this to profit. Result cells, I'm just changing it to cell number E9. Now you can go ahead and hit the OK button. What you're seeing here is Excel has printed the final scenario summary table for different values. Interestingly, you can see the first row here, that is changing cells. It says E4. The cell number E4 here represents quantity. E4 is not very meaningful. We would like to change it from E4 to quantities, and cell number E9 represents profit. You can see here the different values of the changing quantities: 200, 300, and 400. For 200, you're making a profit of 500. And for 300 quantities, you're making a profit of 750. And when you make 400, when you produce 400 quantities, the expected profit is 1,000. I'm not happy with this particular display of the cell name. We would like to change it and give it a more meaningful name. To do this, we will go back to the source sheet. So sheet number 1 is the source sheet. Firstly, let me change the quantity to the original value of 100. This is the original value. We have changed 100 to 3 different scenarios. What I like to do here is the cell name, as you can see here, is E4, which is what is being displayed in the scenario summary table. I'm not happy with E4, and therefore let me delete E4 and say quantity. I'm going to type quantity and hit enter. Now I'm going to repeat the same thing for cell number E9. It names the cell as E9. You can just change this to profit and hit enter. Once you've made these changes, we will have to rerun the what if analysis. If you go back to the scenario summary, you can see here, it does not change automatically. The cell name does not get reflected automatically. We have to go back to the source sheet and rerun the what if analysis. Drop-down menu, I'll be clicking on Scenario Manager. These are the 3 different scenarios. Now, I'll ignore the option Show, and I can simply hit the option Summary. Result cells, I'm going to change this to cell number E9 and hit the OK button. Now, this is more meaningful. You can see here, it displays the word quantity. So the first row represents quantity and the second row represents profit. The current value is 100. So if you were to double the quantity, the profit would also double as compared to the current value. So when the quantity is 200, the profit jumps from 250 to 500. When the quantity is tripled, the profit also tripled. You see the same trend. When the quantity is increased to 400, the expected profit changes to 1000. So this is how you can prepare a scenario summary table. In this case, I've kept it very, very simple. I've just looked at 3 different scenarios. In a real-time scenario, you can have 10, 15 scenarios. You can use the scenario manager option to choose different scenarios and see what is the impact of change of those cells on profit. If we go back to sheet 1, I have only changed quantity, but it would be a good exercise to check what happens if I increase the profit, or what happens if there is a discount in the transportation cost. It would be very, very interesting to change these cells and study its impact on the profit as well. With Scenario Manager, you can change only one cell at a time. You can't change multiple cells. You can see this as a possible drawback of Scenario Manager. But there are other options in Excel like Solver. Using Solver, you can play around with multiple input variables. In this instance, I've kept it very, very simple, wherein I've just changed the quantity and studied its impact on target. With this, I have come to the end of today's video. In today's video, we have looked at what exactly do we mean by what if analysis, the different applications of what if analysis, the advantage of using what if analysis, and how you can prepare a summary table so that you could go ahead, brainstorm with your team and arrive at the best choice of quantity and profit for your organization. I thank you very much for watching this particular video. I request you to subscribe to my channel, also like and share my videos. Thank you very much once again. Have a great day. ahead.